Rachel hesitated outside the cafe, her hands gripping the wheels of her chair. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if everyone passing by could see the turmoil beneath her calm facade. Inside, Anna was waiting. It had been 2 days since their phone call, and Rachel still wasn't sure why she had agreed to meet. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was hope. When Rachel finally entered, Anna stood, her warm smile tinged with nervousness. "Thanks for coming." Rachel nodded stiffly, rolling up to the table. "Let's get this over with." Anna wasted no time pulling out a folder filled with papers and medical notes. "I reviewed everything I could find," Anna began. "Your injury is real. Don't get me wrong. But the initial diagnosis and treatment plan don't align with what I've seen in similar cases. There were signs of incomplete spinal cord damage in your scans, but the doctors treated it as a complete injury." Rachel frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means there's a chance, however small, that your spinal cord wasn't severed completely. It might still be capable of transmitting signals, at least partially," Anna explained. But instead of pursuing aggressive rehabilitation or additional testing, they focused on managing your pain and assuming the worst. Rachel's hands clenched into fists. "You're saying they gave up on me?" Anna met her gaze. "I'm saying they might have been wrong." Later that day, Rachel shared Anna's findings with Emily, who had come over to check on her. "This is insane," Emily said, pacing the living room. "How could they miss something like that?" "I don't know," Rachel said quietly, staring at the folder Anna had given her. Emily stopped and turned to her. "What are you going to do?" Rachel sighed. "Anna thinks I should get a second opinion, maybe even see a specialist." Emily sat down beside her, taking Rachel's hand. "Then we'll do it. Whatever it takes." Rachel blinked back tears. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Emily smiled sadly. "Because I should have been here for you sooner. I let Mark carry the load, thinking he could handle it all. But you're my sister, Rach. I should have fought for you." Rachel squeezed her hand, the cracks in their relationship starting to mend. The alliance between Rachel, Anna, and Emily didn't stay hidden for long. Mark came home one evening to find Emily's car in the driveway and the three women huddled around the dining table. "What's going on?" Mark asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Rachel glanced up, her heart pounding. "We're looking into my case." Mark's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, looking into it?" "Anna found discrepancies in my medical records," Rachel said, her tone firm. "She thinks I might have been misdiagnosed." Mark's jaw tightened. "You've been talking to her?" "Yes," Rachel replied, meeting his glare. Mark slammed his briefcase onto the counter. "Unbelievable. After everything I've done for you, you're teaming up with her? The woman you accused me of cheating with? This isn't about you, Mark," Rachel snapped. "This is about me, about my life." Mark's face twisted with frustration. "I've been here every step of the way, Rachel. I've given everything for you. And now you're taking her word over mine?" Emily stepped in, her voice sharp. "This isn't about loyalty, Mark. It's about finding out the truth." Mark turned to her, his expression incredulous. "You're in on this too?" "Yes," Emily said firmly, "because Rachel deserves to know if there's a chance she can get better." Mark threw up his hands. "And what if it's all for nothing? What if it's just false hope? Have you thought about what that would do to her?" Rachel's voice was quiet but steady. "False hope is better than no hope." That night, Mark retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Rachel stayed in the living room, staring at the stack of papers in front of her. "Are you okay?" Emily asked softly. Rachel nodded, though her chest felt heavy. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay again, but I need to do this, Emily. I need to know." Her sister wrapped an arm around her, and for the first time in months, Rachel felt like she wasn't facing the battle alone. The envelope sat untouched on the table. It wasn't marked with anything unusual, just an innocuous stack of medical documents Anna had helped Rachel request from the hospital. But buried within it was the answer Rachel had been searching for. Emily was beside her as she flipped through the pages, a mixture of nervous energy and grim determination filling the air. "Here," Rachel said, pausing to point at a section in the doctor's notes. The words jumped out at her. "Possible incomplete spinal cord injury. Recommend further diagnostic tests to confirm prognosis." "Recommend further diagnostic tests," Emily read aloud, her brow furrowing. "What happened to that? Did they ever do it?" Rachel's hands shook as she turned the page. There was no follow-up. The next note was months later, focusing on pain management and physical therapy. They didn't follow through, Rachel whispered, her voice hollow. Emily looked outraged. This is negligence. We could sue. Rachel shook her head, her mind racing. This wasn't about the hospital. This was about Mark. She remembered his face when she had told him about Anna's findings, his resistance to the idea of revisiting her diagnosis. At the time, she thought it was frustration or disbelief, but now a darker thought crept in. Had he known? When Mark came home that evening, Rachel was waiting for him in the living room, the folder open on the table. Hey, he said cautiously, noticing her expression. What's going on? Sit down, Rachel said, her tone icy. Mark hesitated but obeyed, glancing at the papers in front of her. Did you know about this? Rachel asked, sliding the document across the table. Mark's face blanched as he read the words. Rachel, answer me, she said, her voice sharp. Did you know they recommended more tests? That there was even a chance my diagnosis wasn't final? Mark's shoulders slumped, and he let out a shaky breath. Yes. Rachel stared at him, her heart breaking all over again. You knew? And you didn't tell me? I didn't think it mattered, Mark said quickly. The doctors were clear. There was almost no chance of recovery. I thought it would be cruel to give you hope when there was nothing there. Rachel felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. So you decided for me? You decided I didn't deserve to know? I was scared, Rachel? Mark exclaimed, his voice cracking. I was scared of what it would do to you, of what it would do to us. Don't you dare make this about us, Rachel spat. This was about control, about keeping me dependent on you. That's not fair, Mark said defensively. Do you have any idea what it's been like, watching you suffer, trying to hold everything together while you shut me out? Rachel's laugh was bitter. Don't you dare play the martyr. You cheated on me, Mark. You lied to me, and now I find out you let me sit in this chair for years when there might have been a way out. Mark buried his face in his hands. I didn't cheat, he mumbled. Rachel's eyes narrowed. What? I didn't cheat, he repeated, looking up. Yes, I confided in Anna. Yes, I crossed a line, but it was never physical. I never wanted to hurt you like that. Rachel's jaw tightened. And yet you did. That night, Rachel sat alone in the dark. The documents spread out around her like fragments of a broken truth. Mark's betrayal cut deeper than she thought possible. It wasn't just the emotional affair or the secrets he had kept. It was the realization that the person she had relied on most had also been the one to keep her from the one thing she wanted most, a chance at freedom. For months, Rachel had seen herself as a burden, a weight Mark had to carry. Now, she saw the truth. He had wanted her to need him. She didn't know if she could forgive him. She didn't know if she wanted to. But one thing was certain, she wasn't going to let him or anyone else control her life anymore. Rachel sat in the office of Dr. Latham, a specialist Anna had recommended. The walls were lined with degrees and accolades, and the air smelled faintly of antiseptic. Despite the sterile surroundings, Rachel felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Emily sat beside her, squeezing her hand. We're here, no matter what happens. Dr. Latham entered, carrying a tablet. He greeted Rachel with a calm, professional demeanor, then sat across from her. I've gone through your records, Mrs. Donovan, and I agree. There are inconsistencies. Rachel held her breath. Dr. Latham continued, your initial scans do show significant damage, but there are indications that your injury wasn't as severe as originally diagnosed. If this was caught early, rehabilitation and surgical intervention might have been possible. Rachel's stomach clenched. But now, Dr. Latham's expression softened. There's still a chance. It won't be easy and it won't be perfect, but with surgery and intensive therapy, you could regain partial mobility, maybe more. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. It wasn't the miracle she had secretly wished for, but it was something. What are the risks? Emily asked, her voice steady. The surgery is complex, Dr. Latham explained. There's no guarantee of success, and there's a risk of complications. But with the right team and a lot of hard work, I believe it's worth trying. Rachel looked at Emily, then back at Dr. Latham. Her voice was firm. Let's do it. In the days leading up to the surgery, Rachel and Emily grew closer than they had been in years. Emily took over every detail, arranging appointments, coordinating with doctors, even remodeling parts of Rachel's home to make recovery easier. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Rachel turned to her sister. Why are you doing all this? After everything, I wouldn't blame you if you walked away. Emily sighed. Because I should have been there from the start. I thought Mark had it handled, and I convinced myself that was enough. But you're my sister, Rachel. I don't want to make that mistake again. Rachel reached for her hand, their bond quietly mending in the shared silence. Mark's guilt was palpable in every interaction. He hovered in the background, offering to help but never quite knowing how. Why are you still here? Rachel asked one evening, her tone exhausted. Mark looked at her, his eyes shadowed with regret. Because I love you, and because I don't know how to leave. Rachel stared at him, unsure whether to believe him. You didn't love me enough to tell me the truth. How do I trust you now? I don't expect you to, Mark admitted. I just want to make things right if you'll let me. Rachel didn't answer. She wasn't ready to forgive him, but she wasn't ready to let him go either. The morning of the surgery came faster than Rachel expected. As she lay on the hospital bed, waiting to be wheeled into the operating room, her mind raced. Emily was by her side, holding her hand. You've got this, she said, her voice unwavering. Mark stood at the foot of the bed, his expression pained. Rachel, he said quietly, I'm so sorry for everything. Rachel looked at him, her voice steady. I'm not doing this for you, Mark. I'm doing it for me. The surgery was long and grueling, but Dr. Latham's team emerged with cautious optimism. The procedure went as planned, he told Emily and Mark in the waiting room. Now it's up to her and her determination to see how far she can go. Recovery was grueling, filled with physical therapy sessions that pushed Rachel to her limits. There were days she wanted to give up, days when the pain felt unbearable. But Emily was always there, cheering her on, and even Mark showed up, his quiet presence a reminder of his remorse. Months later, Rachel stood in the therapy room, gripping the parallel bars with trembling hands. Sweat dripped down her face, her arms shaking as she shifted her weight forward. Come on, Rachel, her therapist encouraged. One more step. With a deep breath, Rachel moved her foot, the motion awkward and slow but deliberate. The room erupted in cheers, but Rachel barely heard them. She was too busy focusing on the sensation in her legs, the feeling she thought she'd never experience again. That night, Rachel sat by the window in her wheelchair, the progress she'd made weighing heavily on her mind. Emily joined her, handing her a cup of tea. You did it, Emily said, smiling. I'm not there yet, Rachel replied. No, Emily agreed, but you're closer than ever. Mark approached cautiously, standing in the doorway. I wanted to say good night, he said softly. Rachel turned to him, her expression unreadable. Good night, Mark. He hesitated, then left the room, the door clicking softly behind him. Rachel stared out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. She didn't know what the future held, for her marriage, her family, or her body, but for the first time in years, she felt in control. She had fought for her freedom, and she wasn't going to let it slip away again. The first time Rachel walked unaided, it was just 2 small steps. The therapist stood nearby, ready to catch her if she faltered, and Emily cheered from across the room, her hands pressed to her mouth. Rachel's knees wobbled, and every muscle in her legs screamed in protest, but she took those steps anyway. They felt like freedom. When she collapsed back into the chair, gasping for air, tears streamed down her face, not from pain, but from triumph. You're amazing, Emily said, hugging her tightly. Rachel smiled through her tears. I feel amazing. Rachel's recovery wasn't linear. Some days were filled with milestones, taking more steps, standing longer, feeling the faintest sensation return to parts of her legs. Other days were filled with setbacks, pain, and frustration. Through it all, Emily remained steadfast, her unwavering support a reminder of the bond they had repaired. Mark, too, lingered on the edges of Rachel's life, trying to help without overstepping. But the distance between them felt insurmountable. One evening, as Rachel practiced walking with a cane in her living room, Mark entered cautiously. You've come so far, he said, his voice tinged with awe. Rachel nodded, lowering herself onto the couch. I didn't think I could do it, she admitted. But I did. Mark sat across from her, his expression heavy. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Rachel, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. Rachel studied him, the man who had once been her rock, but who had also betrayed her trust. She felt gratitude for the parts of him that had supported her, but knew she couldn't rebuild their marriage on gratitude alone. I've been thinking about us, she said carefully. Mark's face fell as though he already knew what she would say. I can't stay in this marriage, Rachel continued. I don't hate you, Mark, but I need to find out who I am without you, without anyone. Mark's eyes glistened and he nodded slowly. I understand. I'll always love you, Rachel, even if I don't deserve you. Leaving Mark was difficult. Packing her things, moving into a small apartment, and navigating the world without him felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. But as Rachel began to rebuild her life, she found a strength she hadn't realized she possessed. Anna reached out not long after Rachel moved. At first, Rachel hesitated to respond. Their connection was tangled in too much pain and complexity. But curiosity, and perhaps a need for closure, led Rachel to agree to coffee. When Anna walked in, Rachel saw her in a new light. She wasn't the enemy Rachel had once imagined. She was a flawed, kind, and courageous woman who had played a pivotal role in changing Rachel's life. Thank you for meeting me, Anna said, sitting down. Rachel nodded. I wasn't sure if I should. Anna smiled ruefully. I wasn't sure if I should ask. They sat in silence for a moment before Anna spoke again. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for my part in hurting you. Rachel stared into her coffee. I hated you, for a long time. I understand, Anna said softly. But then you saved me, Rachel continued, looking up. You saw something no one else did, including me. Anna smiled, relief flickering across her face. I didn't save you, Rachel. You saved yourself. Rachel considered her words and realized they were true. Maybe, she said, but you helped. By the time they parted, Rachel realized she no longer saw Anna as a rival or an intruder in her life. She saw her as a reminder of how messy, complicated, and surprising healing could be. Months later, Rachel stood at the edge of a hiking trail she'd been too afraid to visit since her accident. The sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. She gripped her cane tightly, her heart racing. This was the trail where her life had changed forever, where she had once lost everything. But now, as she took her first step onto the dirt path, she felt like she was reclaiming it. Each step was slow and deliberate, but it was hers. At the first overlook, Rachel paused, the view of the valley spreading out before her. She leaned on her cane and smiled. For the first time in years, she wasn't looking back at what she had lost. She was looking forward to what she could become. Thank you so much for watching and joining me on this emotional journey. If this story moved you, made you think, or simply kept you hooked, don't forget to like the video and share it with others who might enjoy it too. And if you want more compelling stories filled with twists, drama, and inspiration, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Your support means everything and helps this channel grow. Until next time, take care and keep believing in the power of a good story.